Houston, that is to say Naples, we have a problem. But I can imagine a solution. A world in which we love food that loves us back. A world in which food is medicine that will actually go down. Here's where we'll go over the next 16 minutes and 37 seconds. We'll talk about good advice that's hard to follow, the potential difficulty in getting there from here, power and responsibility but reworked backwards, getting a clue or perhaps 5, GPS for the foodscape, proof in the pudding and everywhere else, better medicine, and a spoonful of figurative sugar. Michael Pollan has offered us very good advice about food, namely eat food, not too much, mostly plants. I'd like to begin by pointing out just how good this advice actually is, were we to follow it, because diet and destiny are irrevocably linked. In 1993, a paper was published in the Journal of the American Medical Association entitled Actual Causes of Death in the United States. Up until then, we talked about the leading causes of death being heart disease, cancer, stroke, diabetes. McGinnis and Figi in that seminal paper said what we really want to know is what caused that. And so they told us the leading causes of death in the United States were just 10 behaviors we all ostensibly control, and that list in turn overwhelmingly dominated by the top 3. Tobacco, dietary pattern, physical activity. That was 1993. The same findings were updated in 2004. The only change over the expanse of a decade was some decline in the death toll from tobacco, thankfully, but actually a worsening impact of eating badly, lack of physical activity, and their aggregate impact upon the obesity epidemic and attendant chronic disease. We have looked at this problem in reverse as well and seen that were we to modify these behaviors we ostensibly all control, we could dramatically refashion our fate. And so the case may be made, and I make it this morning to you as a physician who deals in the cutting edge of biomedical advance, that the master levers of medical destiny are not scalpels and stethoscopes, but they are feet, forks, and fingers. Were we to apply these well, we could all reclaim a better destiny for ourselves and those we love. Don't smoke, put these to good use, and stick your forks into food, mostly plants. These master levers of destiny reach into our innermost interstices. My good friend Dean Ornish spoke here yesterday morning. He may have referenced this work himself, but I will do so again. Along with others, Dean has shown that if we aggressively apply what we know about lifestyle, we can cause regression of atherosclerotic plaque. We can clean out our coronary arteries. That's very nice. But more recently, Dean has moved on with colleagues to show, and this was a study, the one cited on the slide, in 30 men with prostate cancer, that if we take advantage of the power of lifestyle, we can change the behavior of our very genes. This study showed that a lifestyle intervention caused upregulation of genes that downregulate prostate cancer and downregulation of genes that cause prostate cancer to grow. We have long debated the dichotomy between nature and nurture. The truth is, if we take hold of the master levers of destiny, we can nurture nature. The choice need not be made. And we have a very recent reminder of the power of lifestyle in a paper published this past summer. 23,000 adults in and around Potsdam, Germany were asked about 4 behaviors. Do you smoke, yes or no? Do you eat well, yes or no? That meaning habitual intake of fruits, vegetables, and whole grain. Are you physically active, yes or no? Do you control your weight? And I would argue that weight control is not a behavior. It is, in fact, an outcome associated with 2 behaviors already on the list. So frankly, there were really only 3 behaviors. But here's what they translated into. Those with all good answers, I don't smoke, I eat well, I'm physically active, my weight's under control, had an 80% lesser likelihood of experiencing any major chronic disease than those with 4 bad answers. And going to any one good answer from a bad reduced the risk of any major chronic disease by 50%. The master levers of medical destiny, indeed. But alas, we say that knowledge is power, but it is not true. Knowledge may be necessary for power, but it clearly is not sufficient, because the gap between what we know and what we do belies it. We have known what the major causes of premature death and chronic morbidity are in this country for the span of 2 decades at least, and have not yet taken action in response to that knowledge. Knowledge is not power. The one must be translated into the other. We also tend to say, where there's a will, there's a way, and I respond, not necessarily. We need both. We must both cultivate will and pave the way. Neither alone can get the job done. And the job must be done, because the gains in public health would be greater than anything we have ever experienced before, were we to apply what we know about the power of lifestyle. There is widespread consensus among my colleagues in preventive medicine that the application of knowledge we already have could reduce heart disease rates by 80%, diabetes by 90%, cancer by between 30 and 60%, with similar gains across a laundry list of other conditions. Now, I'm just intuiting here, because it's hard to see against the light and into the dark, that I have not brought a tear to anyone's eye. Is that correct? Any tears? Any ultra-sensitive individuals out there? No tears. I suspected as much. One of the challenges we must face collectively, and I say this as a public health practitioner and a clinician, is that we must part the veil of statistical anonymity and see that when we talk about the public health, there is no public. It's just you and me and everybody else just like us. And if you don't mind, I'd ask you to help me prove that right now. If you or someone you love has been affected by heart disease, please raise your hand and keep it in the air. If you or someone you love has been affected by cancer, please raise your hand and keep it in the air. And if you or someone you love has been affected by stroke or diabetes, please raise your hand and keep it in the air. And folks, now look around the room. Now everybody's thinking about themselves or someone they love, right? That's not some statistically anonymous public. Now imagine we applied what we know, and 8 out of 10 of us never had to put our hands in the air in the first place. That's real suffering in the lives of real people we really love that would not have happened. That is the potential that lies before us if we find the means to convert knowledge into the power of action. And for those of you who think that talking just about lives and loved ones is insufficient, there is a fortune to be saved here. A staggering sum that could very well be the difference between our national solvency and national insolvency. And this is material you're hearing every day in the news, so I needn't dwell on this point. But as good as the advice is, eat well, mostly plants, it's very hard to follow. And it's hard to swallow. This is from the book Hungry Planet, What the World Eats, and it represents the typical shopping experience of an American family of 4 for 1 week. Now, if you look at this selection, there are grapes and tomatoes in the background, so there are some plants, but that's it. And frankly, eat mostly plants is so irrelevant here, I think we would have to offer alternative advice. Namely, if it glows in the dark, you probably shouldn't eat it. But even that advice, relevant as it is, may be hard to apply. It may seem that you can't get there from here. And in fact, I would argue that we have leaned too heavily on willpower, believing, or at least hoping, that where there's a will, there's a way, and ignoring the reality that we must both cultivate will and pave the way. And yet there is good advice available to us, and we should apply it. We must cultivate skill power. There are things people never knew they never knew. These 4 products on every supermarket shelf in the country, if we match them for calories and then look at the sodium content, the saltiest of the 4 is the breakfast cereal, followed by the chocolate drink, then the corn chips, then the potato chips. I wonder how many of my clinical colleagues counseling someone with hypertension tell them, if you feel like having a salty snack, not a problem, but stay the hell out of the breakfast cereal aisle. And if they're not offering you that advice, are you supposed to figure that out for yourself? Here we have 2 products. Every supermarket carries these. We'll match them for calories. Guess where this is going? More added sugar in the pasta sauce. Clearly then, my fellow clinicians should tell their diabetic patients, If you feel like having an ice cream sundae, not a big problem to put fudge sauce over it, but if you see a jar of marinara sauce, run for your life. And some of the messages on food that are deceiving are actually about health. Who would buy low-fat peanut butter? A choosy mom who thinks it's going to taste better? No, a choosy mom who thinks it's going to be better for her kids. But she would be wrong. When you look at these products holistically, the nutritional profile of the original peanut butter is superior because they took out fat, but they added sugar, they added sodium, they reduced the fiber, didn't change the energy density. They fixed one thing, they broke five. The front of the package will tell you the truth. One may hope nothing but the truth. It will never tell you anything remotely like the whole truth. And so, we can take guidance from the Spider-Man movies. This is clearly a very cultured audience, so I trust you've all seen these. I don't know if you've all seen all three of them as I have, but I trust you know that in the Spider-Man movies, Peter Parker's Uncle Ben says, with great power comes great responsibility. As a public health practitioner, the corollary to that is, before we ask people to take responsibility for their health, we must make sure they are empowered. It's our job. One way to do this is to educate children, and so I have attempted this with my colleagues. I've tried to get children clued into health by giving them a clue, or in fact 5, in the Nutrition Detectives program. 5 clues that fit on a refrigerator magnet that children and their parents can use to identify and choose more nutritious foods. This program is free. It's accessible on my website. There's a free DVD. It's in thousands of schools. If you are an educator or know one, please pass it on. We have great results using this program. And I'll give you a hint. One of the 5 clues is the shorter the ingredient list, the better. Simple, actionable education about choosing more nutritious food. But I move on to what I think is a more powerful solution, namely GPS for the foodscape. And I'll introduce you to a program called NuVal. This story begins in 2003. I was privileged at that time to be a member of 15 academics invited by then Secretary of Health Tommy Thompson to meet with him, the Commissioner of the FDA, the other public health leaders, gather around a conference table, and each get a turn to say what we thought the feds could or should do to confront and reverse the trends in epidemic obesity and diabetes. When my turn came, I said, I think we need a food supply for dummies. Everything in this country is set up for dummies, but you need a PhD in nutritional biochemistry to follow Michael Pollan's advice in the supermarket. That's just wrong. And I know this is true because my wife has a PhD from Princeton University, but in neuroscience, not nutritional biochemistry, and even she gets confused in the supermarket. She is an expert. We have 5 kids. She's done more shopping than just about anybody I know. She has to live with me. She knows everything I know. Even she will say, what do I do with these 4 breads? This one has the most fiber but the most sodium. This one has less sodium but high fructose corn syrup. This one says 0 grams trans fat on the front but has partially hydrogenated oil in the ingredient list. This one says 12 grains, but I don't think any of them are whole grains. You want the most nutritious bread? Bucko, you figure out which one it is. So I told the secretary and the commissioner that's just too damn hard. Convene a group of the top experts in nutrition and public health, support them to pool their knowledge and expertise, and create a measure of overall nutritional quality, express it in simple symbols any nincompoop could understand, 1, 2, 3, A, B, C, green, yellow, red, put it on the front of every bag, box, bottle, jar, and can in the food supply, make everyone a nutrition expert at a glance. We'll do the heavy lifting. They don't have to. And by the way, if that sounds heretical, I would point out that that's the kind of pragmatism physicians need to deal with all the time. We take all the biometric data at the end of your annual physical and tell you whether or not we think you're healthy. We put it all together. You expect us to do that because we've had umpteen years of education to empower us to interpret those data. We don't just leave you with the data and say, you figure out whether or not you're healthy. Well, folks, if we can sum up the health of a Homo sapien, we sure as hell can sum up the healthfulness of a loaf of bread. Anyway, the secretary and commissioner said, thanks for coming, Dave. Don't call us. We almost certainly won't call you. And 2 years later, when they hadn't, I lost my patience and said, I'll do it myself. So I convened a group of colleagues from throughout North America. You see them here. And if you know the nutrition space at all, you would recognize that this is indeed the Olympic dream team of nutrition and public health experts. We worked together for 2 years. We identified all of the relevant nutrient considerations, and we built an algorithm around a concept called a trajectory score. How does the concentration of a nutrient in a food compare to the recommended concentration in a healthy diet? We then adjusted credit for all the nutrients based on the conditions with which those nutrients are associated, how common the conditions are, how serious, and how strong the association between nutrient and condition. And when we were done, we had 20 pages of completely mind-numbing computer programming. This is the poor man's version, but so what? If I may ask a question, how many of you can drive a car? How many of you can build a car? My point exactly, right? Who cares what the hell's going on under the hood if you can get in, turn the key, and go vroom? So under the hood, we had to pack in all of the complexities of modern nutritional and epidemiologic science. But it is a turnkey system that expresses overall nutritional quality on a scale from 1 to 100. The higher the number, the more nutritious the food. And here you see just some samplings of those foods. The database for the Nuval program now includes approximately 45,000 brand-specific items. We're scoring everything in the food supply, but that's a big job. This system is currently in 526 supermarkets in 19 states and will be rolling out to more. In fact, there'll be a significant announcement about that just next week. But if you want to see it soon at a supermarket near you, you may need to speak up. We tested this with consumers. Gertrude Stein wisely told us a difference to be a difference must make a difference. Would this make a difference? And to stick to the timeline, I'll be brief, but the answer was yes. We did focus groups. There was a consulting firm that did internet marketing assessments and found that in 900 people, overwhelmingly, a system like this would influence their choice of food. We also found it would influence their choice of store, that a supermarket offering a system like this would attract them. They would cross the street, stop shopping at A, start shopping at B, which should start to suggest that there is a business opportunity here. This is not an us versus them. This is a win-win scenario. The system is universally appealing and would be helpful to just about everybody. There's ongoing consumer research in the stores where the system is live, and it's beginning to show shifts in purchases to the higher scoring items within categories. We're bringing this into schools, initially in the Midwest. We're actually looking here in Florida. Palm Beach County is considering this, and that's one of the largest school districts in the country. We'll be providing this to schools at no charge to them, putting this in the cafeteria and on vending, and assessing before-after choices the kids make when they are nutrition experts. And although we're bringing it to schools, it has already been tested in a variety of ways. We've looked at its correlation with expert opinion. And I'll just flash through these slides. You'll take my word for it. I'm from Yale, so of course I brought data. We've scored a more nutritious and a less nutritious diet and seen that, in fact, when we aggregate scores to the level of diet, that the more nutritious diet, the DASH diet, dietary approaches to stop hypertension, scores significantly higher than the typical American diet, as we would hope. We've also looked at the correlation in 16,000 people between this and the Healthy Eating Index developed by the USDA. They correlate significantly. But perhaps most importantly, colleagues at the Harvard School of Public Health, working independently of us, have looked at the correlation between this metric and actual health outcomes in 70,000 women, and they found that the Nuval system, scoring all of their foods, aggregating it to the level of diet, was a better predictor of the total risk of chronic disease than the Healthy Eating Index developed by the USDA for that job, and the same thing in 40,000 men, and the system outperformed the Healthy Eating Index in predicting mortality. The quality of food translates into the quality of diets, translates into the likelihood of living or not. Food could be medicine, and it is much superior to the alternatives. We can treat the conditions, diabetes, obesity, related chronic disease, with pharmacotherapy and surgery. But those come at enormous human costs, they come at costs in side effects, and they come at financial costs. The side effects of a healthy lifestyle include greater vitality and longevity. They don't just fix the thing that's broken, they make us better overall. So I would make the case that food is not just medicine. It is better medicine. However, a spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down. Medicine go down, medicine go down. Just a spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down. in the most delightful way. Folks, I can imagine a world in which food is medicine that will actually go down because everybody has that spoon. Thank you very much.